Good morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Moss again here at allpointstv.com and also WFOV 92.1. And we are very glad to have you with us this afternoon at 2 o'clock in the afternoon here at the studio that everybody is now talking about. And also the great radio station that is heralded by Mr. Paul Herring, who is doing an excellent job over there along with Odyssey House. And they're bringing together some of the best programming here in the city of Flint. We are greatly appreciative of the fact that they are partnering with us here at allpointstv.com, and we couldn't ask for a better team to be actually presenting programs of interest to the community here in Flint. Hope you stay tuned for the next hour. We're going to be saying a few things here that would be, first of all, a continuation of our discussions the last 2 weeks on the impeachment process, which I'm finding out that very few persons understand, including some of the scholars. And I'll say a few things about Black History Month, since we're closing Black History Month out this week. And I'll be making some comments that are out of the mix as far as that is concerned also, and we'll see where we go from there. But I want to start out by picking up what we left off last week. We were trying to say a few things about how the impeachment process operates in this country, since it seems like they are not going to stop until they bring about the charges against the President of the United States, this idea of impeached 45. And I want to clear up what the process should look like based upon the constitutional mandates, rather than this idea of what is being talked about by people like Alan Dershowitz, who have been criticizing for the last several weeks, about his lack of understanding of the process. And most persons don't understand it. And it's because they're being taught by people like Alan Dershowitz that does not understand it. And you listen to these people, you will be even more confused by the time they get through explaining.
You said, somebody pointed out on Facebook, and you're a teacher, so I mean, you might be able to shed light on this if it was accurate or not, but as the federal government increased their control over schools, the ideas of civics class basically diminished. They were reduced. And somebody pointed out, I don't know if it's accurately or inaccurately, but they said when you Democrats took over, that's what this individual said. It wasn't me, so don't go blistering me, people. But it's like when you Democrats took over, you cut that out. You cut out civics classes. You don't want people to know how the Constitution really works. Now, do you think that's a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment. And it goes into, that's definitely true. And in a larger sense, in another instance, the idea of the attack upon the strictures of Western civilization on the college level, they cut out the classes called Western Civ. For example, when I was in college, every student had to take a year course in Western civilization. I would doubt seriously if Western civilization is taught anywhere in any of the universities today, because of the attacks being made upon Western civilization.
Maybe Hillsdale.
Yeah, maybe. I'm going to check with Hillsdale. If there's any possibility of it happening, it would be at Hillsdale College, because they're so independent of the mechanics in place here put into place by the federal government. They do not want anything standing in their way as the globalists continue their efforts to bring about a global reach, which was written about back in the 80s, by the way, by the book put out by Mueller and Barnett, a book called Global Reach, Ronald Mueller and David Horowitz. Let me start out, though. I want to go back to our conversation from last week when we were talking about impeachment. And I want to read, after we got through with that conversation, I went online to read what do the pundits have to say about the question that I raised last week: can the Congress members be impeached? And I want to see what would be some of the answers given to that question online. And I got this this part of it from the internet, and here's what they had to say about it. The question is, can the Congress members be impeached? So here's the answer by this one writer. It says here, the short answer is maybe, but probably not. Let me read further. The Constitution states that the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. The question then, I'm still reading, the question then is whether or not members of Congress are considered, quote, civil officers of the United States. To my knowledge, this has never been ruled on in a court. One member of Congress was actually impeached, Senator William Blount from Tennessee in 1797. The House voted to impeach him, but the Senate refused to accept the impeachment because they had already voted to expel Blount from the Senate. No other member of the Senate, I'm putting of the Senate here, but he says no other member has since been impeached, but they mean to say no other member of the Senate has since been impeached. Both houses of Congress have the power to expel their own members and have exercised that power more than a handful of times. Still reading, in my view, untrained in constitutional law, however, I don't think members of Congress can be impeached. Here's why. And then he lists 3 reasons why he thinks that members of Congress cannot be impeached. Number 1, the Constitution already gives Congress a way to expel their own members without the impeachment process. 2, impeachment is in Article 2 of the Constitution, which is specific to the executive branch. 3, those that can be impeached according to the Constitution are, quote, all civil officers of the United States. In Article 1 of that same Constitution, it states that no member of Congress may be appointed to any civil office, That leads me to believe, this is guy writing, this leads me to believe that the writers of the Constitution don't consider members of Congress to be civil officers.
What article was that again?
No, I'm just reading this guy that was answering the question.
I thought this was Q. No.
Yeah, I'm just reading what he said. Okay, now I'm going to go behind what he said. I want to correct him because this is nothing but a bunch of nonsense. But I wanted to read what he said first. I've not gotten to the Constitution yet, John. Okay, but what I'm reading here is a person that was attempting to answer the question that I answered last week. When I answered the question, can Congress members be impeached? And so this person, I went online to find out what have some of the pundits said about that. Now I was just reading what one of the pundits wrote. He finishes up his writing on it by saying finally, so since it was tried once, and the Constitution in this case has never been interpreted and ruled on by a court that I'm aware of, I suppose it can be possible, but most likely not. Anyway, there's no need to, since the House and Senate can simply vote to expel a member. Now, people that read this and other such statements made by others, I want to tell you something. This is, all of it is nothing but pure nonsense. Let me go back over and I want to stop and pause to explain, first of all, what is being said here and why this is so wrong and so ridiculous. Now, don't forget the question this person supposedly is answering is, can the Congress members be impeached? He starts the article out, this is his answer now, he starts the answer out by doing what Alan Dershowitz does. He says, the Constitution states that, and he's quoting Article 2, Section 4. He doesn't say that's where it's found, but I'm just telling you where it's found in the Constitution. The Constitution states that, and he says, quote, he's quoting Article 2, Section 4, the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. You know, when I read these people that do things like this, it really just makes my blood pressure boil, because he is purporting to be talking about the impeachment process, and rather than quoting the language in the Constitution that deals with the impeachment process, he goes and and quotes the Constitution as it relates to using the impeachment process to remove a civil officeholder of the United States from office. That is not the impeachment process. What he's quoting is what it requires if the impeachment process is used to remove a civil officeholder of the United States from office. So he goes to Article 2, Section 4, which says the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office, not to be impeached, to be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. That is not the impeachment process. The impeachment process, and I could quote it, but let me let me go read the impeachment process. That's found in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. This is, I wonder if people can read. And I'm going to show you they can't read. And I'm going to show you that this person admits they can't read by what he states in this particular, he is admitting he can't read. I'm going to show you where it's found. And he says it in here, but you have to be able to interpret it. But I'm going to show you that he admits he cannot read. And it's in there, what I read. But I'm going to quote it later on. Let me read, first of all, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, which is the impeachment process. Okay, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5 says the following. The House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers, and shall have the sole power of impeachment. So we're talking about the impeachment process. The impeachment process starts out in the House. The House brings about the charge of impeachment. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5 does that. And then in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6, continuing the impeachment process, starts off in the House, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, then is referred to the Senate where the trial takes place. And here's what Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6 says. Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6. Let me see if I can find that. Section 3, Clause 6 says, the Senate shall choose their other officers, and also a president pro tem. In the absence of the vice president, shall exercise office of President of the United States. Now, in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6, it says this. The Senate shall have the sole power, S-O-L-E, the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath of affirmation. That is, say they swear, they're sworn in, because they're on the jury, they're sworn in to uphold the Constitution. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. So then charges made in the House, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, then is referred to the Senate, Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6, which says the Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachment. When sitting for that purpose, they, meaning the senators, shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court shall preside over the trial if the President is one being tried. And no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members that are present. So I read the impeachment process. Charge made in the House, trial made in the Senate. That's the process. Now, what this writer does, and he makes the same mistake as I said earlier that Alan Dersh was make. Rather than going to the impeachment process, which is in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, and Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6, they go to Article 2, Section 4, and they start talking about what it takes to remove the president if you utilize the impeachment process. That's not the process of impeachment. It's the process for removal from office. And this author, this person that wrote this answer to, can the Congress members be impeached, he is going to what it takes to remove. But the impeachment process is not found in Article 2, Section 4. Article 2, Section 4 sets up what it requires to remove a civil officer of the United States. So he makes that mistake at the outset of his answer. But let me read further to show you other things that are wrong with his response, because it's all wrong. He says the question then is whether or not members of Congress are considered civil officers of the United States. To my knowledge, I'm still reading him, to my knowledge, this has never been ruled on in a court. Now, here's where he actually shows that he's illiterate. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is he is showing here that he is nothing other than a grown-up child that comes out of the time period when we used to have our parents read to us bedtime stories. And they read it for us because we could not read it, for ourselves. He then says this: the question then is whether or not members of Congress are considered civil officers of the United States. To my knowledge, this has never been ruled on in a court. So can he read it for himself? He is saying here he needs to have the court to tell him what the Constitution says. Just like a child cannot read the story, so the parents read it to them. He needs to have the court to read the language so that it can tell him what the language is. Look here. I don't want to hear what the court said about it. It's in black and white for you to read it. The question then is whether or not members of Congress are considered civil officers of the United States. I'm going to answer that question by the Constitution, not by the court. To my knowledge, he says, this has never been ruled on in a court. Why does the court have to rule upon it if the Constitution is the law of the land? The Constitution makes it very specific, and I'm going to read it to let you see it in the Constitution. But I want you to be aware here that we don't even need to have the court to tell us. The Constitution tells us this, but he can't read it. And that's why he thinks they need the 9 justices of the Supreme Court to tell him what the Constitution says. You can read it for yourself, and I'm going to show you where it's found in the Constitution. Don't need the court to get involved in this. The Constitution explains itself, but they can't read it. And so you need to have, like his parents did when he was a child, need to have the court to tell him what he cannot understand in the Constitution. You know what that tells me? It tells me that we are more illiterate in this country today than they were during the founding moments of this country, because it's in the Constitution. But people like Alan Dershowitz and people like this guy right here can't read it. And that's why he's saying here that the court hasn't ruled on it yet. The court doesn't have to rule on it. The Constitution explains itself in terms of what is required for this. He's answering the question here because he says that the court hasn't ruled on it, that whether or not a member of the House or Senate are civil officers of the United States. The Constitution has already declared that whether or not that's true or not. And I'm going to read to you where it's found, but he couldn't read it because he doesn't understand what he's reading. And I'll read it to you where you'll understand it when I get to that point. But let me say here, the Constitution is very clear about whether or not a senator or a member of the House is a civil officer of the United States. It's very clear about that. And I'm going to show you where that's found in a few minutes. He goes on, this guy goes on, both houses of Congress have the power to expel their own members and have exercised that power more than a handful of times. In my view, I'm still quoting this guy, in my view, untrained in constitutional law, I will agree with him on that. He says, I don't think members of Congress can be impeached. Here's this guy saying, I don't think that members of Congress can be impeached. Look, folks. Members of Congress cannot be impeached. Now, he gets off and says that it happened one time in the past where a member of Congress, a senator, William Blount, I told you this last week, William Blount was impeached. Now, here's the confusion of this writer about that case. He says, and let me find that part of his statement, where he talks about Blount. The question then is whether or not members of Congress are considered civil officers of the United States. To my knowledge, this has never been ruled on in a court. One member of Congress was actually impeached, Senator William Blount from Tennessee in 1797. The House voted to impeach William Blount, but the Senate refused to accept the impeachment because they had already voted to expel Blount from the Senate. And he says no other member has since been impeached. So he thinks, this writer thinks, that the reason that the Senate did not try William Blount on the impeachment charge is because by the time it got to the Senate, the person that was to be tried on the impeachment charge had already been expelled from the Senate by the senators, and therefore there was no need to go forward with the trial. Let me tell you something. This is pure nonsense. We're dealing with people that are illiterate. Go to another case. Go to the case of William Belknap, who is the Secretary of War that was impeached and tried in 1876. William Belknap was the Secretary of War under Ulysses S. Grant. And everybody was wondering about why it was William Belknap was able to do so much partying, buying his wife all these expensive things on a salary at that time of $8,000. How are they able to do that? Which is the same question raised right now about these gangsters. How are they able to be millionaires? 50% of the members of the Congress are millionaires on a $174,000 salary in the House and in the Senate. How are they able to be millionaires without producing a product and able to be millionaires on a salary of $174,000? How are they able to do that? That question was raised with William Belknap. They finally found out how he was able to do it. Selling influence by his being the Secretary of War, selling influence in the government and getting kickbacks. So when they found out how he was able to do it, they began to bring 5 charges of impeachment against Bill Knapp. Bill Knapp then runs to Ulysses S. Grant to run ahead of the impeachment process. He's going to resign his position before the articles of impeachment, 5 in numbers, could be invoked against him. And he went to Ulysses S. Grant and was, in fact, offering his resignation, hoping to head off the impeachment process so that they would not invoke impeachment against him. The House of Representatives in 1876 went forward with the impeachment anyway and impeached him. Although he had resigned his position, they carried forth the impeachment. And on the 5 articles, they impeached him nevertheless, and he was tried in the Senate, although he had already resigned. They still tried him in the Senate.
Oh, by the way, we just slid into it. I had a call come in. So anyway, we're already on break from the people from WFOV. I didn't get a chance to give you a heads up. They're
taking their break already?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So you'll be back in a few minutes, a couple minutes, okay?
Okay, they've taken their break with WFOV, and they'll be back in 4 minutes, probably less than that now since they took a break at the 26-minute mark. I'm saying here that we have an example of where a person that was no longer in the position was still impeached, although he stepped down from the position, and he was tried on the impeachment charge, although he no longer occupied an office as a civil officer of the United States. So that cannot be true of what this writer says here about the reason why they did not try William Blount on impeachment because he no longer occupied the offices. That's not true, because look at what happened in 1876 when the person no longer occupied the office, but they went ahead with the impeachment and also went ahead with the trial. So why didn't they go ahead with the trial as it relates to William Blount? Let me now go to the Constitution and share what they found, what they discovered. The reason why they didn't go forward was because of what's found in Article 1, Section 6. Let's put that on the screen, John. Article 1, Section 6, Clause 2. And I want you to read it, John, because I'm going to read it. I'm going to make sure that you read it, and then I'm going to read it from the Constitution.
Okay, what's Article 1?
Article 1, Section 6.
Clause 2.
Clause 2.
No senator or representative shall, during the time in which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which had been created, or the emollients, I don't know what that word means, whereof shall be increased during such time, and no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. Okay,
some of that didn't come through, but I'll read it again. Make sure your mic is on, John, for the second part, because I want you to read something else from the Constitution as well when we get to another segment of the Constitution, which is Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. But in Article 1, Section 6, Clause 2, it says this: no senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or the emolument whereof shall have been increased during such time, and this is the most important part, and no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. Now let me just go back to this part here. I want you to notice something in the language. Something is missing here if their understanding of it is clear. Here's what it doesn't say. I want you to look at this language very carefully down here where it says, no senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any, listen carefully here. The word is missing if their understanding is correct. The word is missing is other. Notice it does not say
Welcome back, WFO viewers. WFO.
Okay, I want to welcome you back.
You were too busy. I didn't want to play the music, so.
Okay. I want to welcome you back from WFOV. No senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed. Notice it does not say to any other civil office on the authority of the United States. It's a very different reading here if you say be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, as opposed to saying to be appointed to any other civil office of the United States. You see the difference here? If the senators or members of the House are members of the civil officers, are included in the civil office of the United States, the language would then say be appointed to any other civil office. Why? Because they already occupy a civil office of the United States. And therefore, the word other would be put in there if they were already civil officers. The mere fact, listen carefully, because this is a matter of literacy. The mere fact it does not say any other officer shows you that they excluded him from being civil officer of the United States. Is that right or wrong? Not only that, let's put up here.
I was wondering where you're going to go with that myself, and then when I was like, wow, he makes
Put your mic on, John.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me at all?
I'm still not hearing you clearly.
Okay, well, yeah. I'm
Not coming through on the mic.
Okay, well, sorry. Yeah, I
Must be
thought
a
it was-
button or something that's off.
No, I'm on. I can be.
It may be coming through there to the listener, but I can.
Yeah.
But I'm going to assume what you're going to say here.
Well, I was just say, yeah, I didn't know where you're going to go with that until you came up with that. You know, I didn't. Dang, it's like, yeah, you made a valid point. You know.
Yeah, you see the language here, John. They can't read. We are people that are running the country that are illiterate. I don't mean that they can't. You know, if you say see spot jump, 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 jump. That's the Dick and Jane books. You can read the words. Because there's no content to that, but you can read the words, but do you understand what you're reading? And so the mere fact the word other is not in that language. No senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States. The mere fact does not say to any other office under the authority of the United States, shows you that the intent was not to include the members of the House and Senate as members, as civil officers of the United States. Otherwise, the word other would have been there. But not only that, let me go to another part to show you the same thing. Look in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. John, put that up on the screen. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. And can you read that for us as well?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Very clearly.
Okay. The executive Section 1, Clause 2, you said, right? Section 2, you said?
I'm having problems. Go ahead and
Yeah.
read it, John.
Okay.
And I'll read it over. I'll read it again when you get through.
Okay.
For some reason, our mics are not clicking today, but that's all right. We'll be able
Okay,
to still make the
section.
point.
Okay, we got the section 1, right? Section 1, Clause 2, correct? Okay. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office or trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed elector.
Okay. It's the same thing. It's the same thing here. I was saying in Article 1, Section 6, Clause 2, that the word other is not there, meaning then there's no connection to civil office of the United States and the senators and the members of the House. If they were civil office of the United States, then it would have said and other members of the civil office of the United States. Let me go back and read it again, because I want you to get this down. It's not hard when you understand the Constitution, but if you don't understand it, as they don't, they make it hard. Article 1, Section 6, Clause 2, no senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States. It does not say be appointed to any other civil office of the United States, which will right there show you that they do not have the intention of placing senators and members of the House under the authority of the United States. They're not civil office of the United States. If they were, the word any other would be there, not any civil office. It would say any other civil office, but it doesn't do that. Another problem you would have there if it was if they were civil office of the United States would be this problem right here, which I didn't point this out when I was talking about it earlier. If it says this, for example, the reason why that can't be true, of them saying that a senator or member of the House civil office of the United States. It cannot be true for this reason, also found in Article 1, Section 6, Clause 2. This is part right here. And no person holding any office under the United States, listen to this right here carefully now, shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. In other words, if they were civil officers of the United States, this part says they can't even hold the office of members of the Senate and the House, because it's forbidden to members of the civil office of the United States. It's forbidden to them in that language. In other words, if the members of the House and Senate were officials of the civil office of the United States, if they were civil office of the United States, they could even hold their office based on this language here. So you see how ridiculous it is. The Constitution is very clear. They are not civil officers of the United States. If they were, they couldn't even be holding the office because it's forbidden to members of the House and Senate if they are civil officers of the United States. Isn't that what it says here? No person holding any office under the United States, I'm reading from the Constitution, shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. They can't even be in office if they are officers of the civil office of the United States. It's forbidden to them if they are members of the Senate and members of the House and they're members under the Constitution of the civil office of the United States. It's forbidden to them even to hold the office. So in other words, the Constitution would have to contradict itself in terms of making them civil officers and then forbidding them to hold office under the officers of the Senate and the House. That's a contradiction, wouldn't it? So it's saying here, not only is it that they're not civil officers of the United States, by saying that you cannot have civil officers of the United States being senators and members of the House, it also, in the earlier part of that, does not say to any other civil office of the United States. Very consistent. To any other office of the United States would be then, if they considered the House and Senate to be office of the United States, it would have to have the word other there to say to any other civil office of the United States. And it doesn't say other, because it does not include them to begin with as members of the House and the Senate as being officers of the United States. But I don't need to just have that as part of the language. They're very consistent here. Let me go to Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. John read it, so let me read it again and show you what that's talking about, because it's very consistent here if you know how to read it. In Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, it says this: each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislators thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which a state may be entitled in the Congress. What they're saying here, in order to decide how many electoral votes a state will have in electing a president, it will be equal to the number of members in the Senate and the members in the House. In Michigan, we have 14 members in the House, 2 members in the Senate. Therefore, they have 16 electoral votes. We have 14 districts. We have 2 senators. So we have 14 members in the House. Each member in the House represents a district in Michigan, and we have 2 senators. So there are 16 electoral votes, but that's not the part I want to get to. I want to get to the part that deals with whether or not what we're doing here is satisfying the question whether or not a member of the House or the Senate are officials of the United States. Okay, so here it continues. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. It says that, but, I'm going to the last part of that, but no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. Now let me explain this to you and to those others like Alan Dershowitz. Notice here in this language, but no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. You notice here the same word missing if it connects the members of House and Senate to being a civil officer of the United States. You notice here how it says, but no senator or representative. Now notice that the word other is missing here where it says or person. It doesn't say or other person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States. You see how important that is? The word other is not there, is it? So what is that saying there? If you're able to read this, I know you're more literate than they are, but they show they're illiterate. If the framers had intended to connect up the House and the Senate to civil office of the United States, it would have said this. But no senator or representative or other person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed as electors. It does not say that. It first of all forbid the members of the House and Senate from being electors. In other words, when you choose a president and you're choosing the Electoral College, members of the House and the Senate are expressly forbidden from being electors. Then it says, or persons, not other persons, or persons holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed electors. It forbids the members of the House and the Senate from being electors, and also forbids those who are civil officers of the United States. But it doesn't say here, or other persons holding an office of trust. It says, or person holding an office of trust. And that's very important. The word other is missing. Because other would connect then, we were talking about other civil officers of the United States as, in fact, the House and Senate. And it does not do that there either. In 2 different parts, the word other is not there. And Alan Dershowitz and others are acting like the word other is in those two particular claims. I hope you can see the point. But these persons can't see the point because they can't read. I don't mean they can't pronounce the words. They can't see the proficiency of the writers of the language and what they meant by it. The word and others is not there in Article 1, Section 6, Clause 2. It is not there in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. The word other is missing, and that's profoundly important. Because other then says that the members of the House and Senate are forbidden to be electors, expressly so. But in addition to that, office holders of the United States, civil officers of the United States, are also forbidden. But that does not include the members of the House and Senate. They are forbidden because it's expressed in the Constitution. They cannot be electors. But in addition to them not being allowed, Office holders, not other office holders, office holders. The word other is not there. Office holders shall not be allowed to be members of the Electoral College. The word other is not there in that part either. John, you see what I'm saying there? The word other is missing, and the fact that it's not there is profoundly important, but Alan Dershowitz and others cannot read and understand that's important. And they want to talk about what's in Article 2, Section 4, which is the removal of a civil office holder, not the impeachment. The impeachment of the office holder, I'm talking about office holders of the United States, not the members of the House and Senate. They are not office holders of the United States. Impeach office holders of the United States is found in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. That's where you lay out the impeachment. What's required for impeachment? Not conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. What's required for impeachment is in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. What's required is a majority vote in the House of Representatives. That's required for impeachment. The trial to convict is not found in Article 2, Section 4. It's found in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6. You convict upon 2/3 of the members of the Senate. Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6. You convict based on a 2/3 vote in the Senate. And when they're sitting for that purpose, the Supreme Court Chief Justice presides over the trial only when the president is the one on trial in the Senate. Based on what? On the impeachment in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, and now he's being tried under Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6. We have not brought in Article 2, Section 4 yet. The impeachment process, Alan Dershowitz, is explained in Article 1. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. Why is it in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5 where the House invokes impeachment? It's because Article 1, Section 2 sets up the House. Article 1, Section 3 sets up the Senate. So the House then, in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5 of the part that sets up the House, it talks about how the House, in Article 1, Section 2, it will be the House, in fact, that invokes impeachment. The Senate then, in Article 1, Section 3, where the Senate is set up, Article 1, Section 3, in the sixth part of that, Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6, in the sixth clause, the trial shall be held in the Senate. We've not brought in Article 2, Section 4 yet, because we're not talking about how you remove the president. We're talking about how you impeach any office holder. Now, in Article 2, Section 4, we go into another dimension of the impeachment process, which is laid out in Article 1. But in Article 2, we go into another phase of the impeachment process. If you're using the process, Alan Dershowitz, to remove a president or another civil officer of the United States, which does not include the members of the House and Senate, because they're not office holders of the United States, provable by reading carefully the language in Article 1, Section 6, Clause 2, and also in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. Go read it again carefully. It excludes members of the House and Senate. It ain't there. The word is missing there, where the word, as I was saying earlier, where you don't have here, or other person, the word other is missing there. So the intent of the frame is very clear. The word other is missing in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. Go read it for yourself and you'll see the word other is not there. Other is a connecting word. Other means that in addition to these people here, also those persons would be included in the language. And it does not have the word other there. And that's major. And that's what they cannot read. And that's why they don't understand that the senators are in fact excluded from the language. Now, the other question is, are the members of this House and Senate civil officers? And the answer to that question is, yes, they are. If we understood that, if they had understood that in 1913, they would not have done what they did in terms of changing the way that we choose senators in this country, if they had understood it. A senator and a member of the House are civil officers of Mississippi, the civil officers of Michigan, the civil officers of Ohio, they are civil officers of the states in which they are elected. Therefore, you understand then why the House is set up in Article 1, Section 2, the People's House, the House of Representatives. The members of the House are elected by the districts in the state. You have to be 25 years of age. You must have presided in the state in which you are elected for 7 years. And you must be a citizen of the country at the time that you are elected. Those are the requirements. 7 years, a citizen, a member of the state in which you are elected, and be 25 years of age. That's for the House, the people's body. In the Senate, you must be in Article 1, don't tell me, Section 3, Clause 4. I'll read it. Article 1, Section 3. Article 1, Section 3, Clause 3, and then I'm going to read Clause 4 also, because I want to show you something different in Clause 4 that you don't find in the House. In Article 1, Section 3, Clause 3, and then I'm going to read Part 4. No person shall be a senator who shall not have attained to the age of 30. Notice it goes up here. In the House, 25 years of age. But look at how the requirement in the Senate is increased. Why? The states. The states. The states are the ones saying that the requirement for being a state representative is higher. You must be 30 years of age in the House, 25. In the Senate, representing the state, 30 years. Must be a resident of the state, 9 years, of the country, 9 years in the country, 9 years rather than 7 years. In the House, you must be a citizen of the country, 7 years. In the Senate, 9 years. And 30 years of age in the Senate, 25 in the House. And why would that be true? Because the states are setting a higher standard for being a representative of the state than it would be a representative in the House. Also, look at the fact that in representing the state, the members of the Senate serve a term that exceeds the term of the president. The president serves a 4-year term. The senators serve a 6-year term. Members of the House serve a 2-year term. So the state set a higher standard for the members of the Senate who serve 6 years. The president only serves 4 years. And that tells you the states are dictating the terms here. And I just want you to see here that they are civil officers of the states in which they are elected. Therefore, they're not subject. The states are not giving the federal government the claim upon those elected officials that come from the state. So now the question comes down to, who are the civil officers of the United States? Not the senators and not the members of the House. We established that in Article 1, Section 6, Clause 2. We also established that in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. That's clear in that language. The word other is not there. In Article 1, Section 6, Clause 2 is not there. And Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 is not there. The word other is not in either one of those two parts of the Constitution in those clauses. And the word other not being there is significant, which they cannot understand that. but the word other is missing there. But other is a connecting word that connects the House and the senators. If they were included in that language, it would say in other offices, civil office holders. But it doesn't say that. It says in office holders, not other office holders, because they're saying by the word other missing that the House and Senate are excluded from that language. And I hope you understand that. I keep going over it because you cannot repeat it enough for the drill home how that word being absent from the language excludes the members of the House and Senate from the idea of them being civil officers of the United States. They are civil officers, but of the states in which they are elected. Okay. The other thing then, and I didn't get to some of what I want to talk about there, but because I want to run this for something else real quickly here. No person shall be a senator who shall not have attained the age of 30 years of age, been 9 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state for which he shall be chosen to be a member of the Senate. 7 years in the House, 9 years a citizen in the Senate. Next week, and I'll have to extend Black History Month, I want to go into the eligibility of the president, because I want to talk about Barack Obama in terms of the usurpation of this man who was passing as the first black president, and I want to show in the Constitution that is not true. And I'm going to show that by looking at the language in the Constitution. I'm also going to show that something about the Civil War by reading the Constitution again in Article 1, Section 9. We'll do that next week. But what I want you to get out of this today is that the civil office holders of the United States are not senators and not members of the House of Representatives because it's not stated in the language of the Constitution, and we don't have to have the courts to say that to us. The Constitution says it. Okay, let me get out of here. This rant is over. Want you to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.